Sorry, when you get careful, I put my phone on silent.
We're ready to begin. This week's parsha is Parshas Mishpatim. So we have, it says in Parshas Mishpatim, we find a lot of the laws of the Torah, specifically relating to damages and people's responsibilities for their properties.
Sorry, mistake to say.
It's all right. So one of the damages, one of the things that one is responsible for is a fire that they set, arson. As it says in the pasuk in chapter 22, verse number 5, it says, "Shalom Yishalem Hamaver Sabeira." One who lights a fire will have to pay for the damages that they cause. So we have in Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein in his volume number 2, Parshas Mishpatim, he was asked the following question. Let's read the question together. Shalom Nishal. So we're going to deal with two halachic questions, and then at the end maybe we're going to add something of our own that after we give the answers that don't have to do with halacha, but don't have to do with Jewish law. Shal nishal marenu shlita b'shila marteket b'din nizak. And Shisora ben Shnei Bachurim. There was a question that was asked, very interesting question, between two young men, Ruvain and Shimon. Two young men. They were together in a boarding school, and they shared a room together, a dorm room. The Ruvain shesovel moed makor, and Ruvain, the kid, one of the kids, Ruvain, he was very cold all the time. You know, some people they're always cold. He was very cold all the time. So yesh tanu chimum chashmali. So I guess probably his parents bought him a heater. They bought him a floor heater. Should put next to his bed. You turn it on, and that's it. Be warm. Ube'erev Shabbos. It was erev Shabbos. Chibur tanuroi l'shaon Shabbat. He said on erev Shabbos. He set his heater on a Shabbos clock, so it should go off. It should go off in the middle of the night when it's the coldest. That's what he did. All right. V'hinei nichnas Shimon lecheder. Then Shimon came back to the dorm room because they're sharing the room, and he was going to sleep. And before he went to sleep, Tola agabe atanan hakabui. He saw the heater, and he was taking off his jacket, and he put his jacket on the heater. He wasn't paying attention that there was a Shabbos clock that was attached to the electrical outlet of the heater. So what happened? In the middle of the night, Hashoni Filas Hatan, or the Shabbos clock turned on the heater. Ubeged Nisraf, and his jacket got burnt. The whole room got burnt. I presume that the two boys survived, but it caused the fire, and the whole room was burnt. And the two young men came in front of my teacher, Big Shalishal. They said to him, "Who's obligated to pay for the damage to the room, to the school, I guess, and for the jacket and all the other possessions of everybody else?" Because is Ruvain obligated to pay? Ruvain was the one with the heater. Is he obligated to pay? He goes for Shimon. He never told Shimon. He didn't put a sign on the heater that says this is going to go on in the middle of the night. First off, all this tanura, and it's his heater. Or Shema Shimon Yishalim Esanezi. Maybe Shimon has to pay because Mishum Sheniach Sham Bigdoi. Right? Shimon put his stuff over there on the heater. Maybe Lachshav Shema Chashmal Yafilin. What was he? He wasn't thinking that this is not. He didn't bother to think maybe the heater is going to go on, so maybe he's obligated because he put his jacket on the heater. There wouldn't have been a fire if he didn't put the jacket in the heater. So who's obligated to pay here? This is the question they asked the rabbi. What?
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar? Why?
What?
Why does it sound familiar? The question. It happened?
With my kitchen. Yeah.
Oh, it happened with your kitchen?
No, not a fire, but something else when somebody was using the house.
Oh, really? Okay, so we'll see. So you tell us the case after we'll see what he says. So Heshim Marina Rav Shlita, he answered the following: Mistabish name to him. He answered that they're both of them are not obligated to pay.
The insurance company.
The insurance company. The insurance, it doesn't make a difference. They make thousands of dollars anyway, right? So what's the difference? Maybe the insurance company has to pay. Mistabish name to her. Perhaps maybe they're both not obligated. Sha'amnam Shimon Asham Bekach Shelo Choshev Al Kan Ruven Yafel Chashmal. Shimon for sure was negligent because he put his jacket on the heater without thinking maybe the heater is going to go on in the middle of the night. Now, but he didn't cause it. He didn't cause direct damage. He put the jacket on the heater,
Which is a stupid thing to do.
which is a stupid thing to do. Granted, it's not a smart thing to do. Granted, but he didn't turn on the heater and then put his jacket on it. You know, he didn't put on the jacket when the heater was on. He didn't know. He was negligent in the fact that he didn't think about it. But that's called a secondary cause. He didn't directly cause the fire. And he brings a proof to this. He brings a proof to this from the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish in Siman Lamed Ches, number 38, number 2. So 38, number 2 in Orach Chaim, the Chazon Ish is talking about using a Shabbos clock on Shabbos. As here we're talking about, I assume, that they set up the Shabbos clock before Shabbos. But he's talking about using the Shabbos clock on Shabbos. And the Chazon Ish says the following words. The Chazon Ish says, let's see. The Chazon Ish says here in number 38, number 2, about using the Shabbos clock on Shabbos. Number 38, number 2. Says like this. Near it appears to me the im sholaf es hasha'on lechapot aminol shel chashmal b'Shabbat b'shvil sheyichab l'zman yadua. A person sets up a Shabbos clock that it should go off at a specific, the light should go off at a specific time. Choshev grama, this is considered to be a secondary cause. Ve'ein bo isa daraisa, and there is no Torah prohibition for such a thing. Why? Because again, it's a secondary cause. He's not doing it directly. He's not turning off the lights on Shabbos. He's setting in motion a series of events that are going to cause that the light should go out on Shabbos, which is called a secondary cause. He says, it's as if there's a fire. And how do you put out a fire on Shabbos? You take well, it's a big fire. You take containers that are made out of what do they make the dishes out of? Not out of China, but what is it? Earthenware, what? Something that's easily burnt, that easily cracks. You fill them up with water, and when the fire reaches them, they crack, the water comes out and puts out the fire. That's how you do it. You're not putting out the fire out directly, but you're putting out the fire with a secondary cause. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean today, I think, as far as I remember, I think in the Shulchan, if there's a fire, then you're supposed to put it out no matter what. But in the times of the Gemara, it didn't work like that. In the times of the Gemara, they try to not directly put out the fire. So what they do is that they put a container of water that easily cracks in the fire, and then when the fire reaches it cracks, the water spills, and the water spills and comes out.
Yeah, but what if you don't have those containers?
Well,
handy?
you have.
Yeah,
them
so then you
handy
put it
just in
out.
case.
Then you put it out, whatever, whichever way. But in this way, let's say you did it, whatever the reason you did it, but you did it, you're not directly putting out the fire. This is a Gemara in Tractate Shabbos, if I'm not mistaken, on page 120b. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me. The Gemara says this in Shabbos that's what one can do. He says the adayin chaser ma'aser shel hiluch hasha'on v'nola koach sheni. Because this is called the movement of the watch, which puts out the movement of the clock, which puts out the electricity, is not yet in place. That's a secondary cause from the movement of the clock. That happens later. You put those pegs, those pins into you put those pins into the Shabbos clock, right? That's when it hits that peg, that's when it's shut. Then it shuts off the switch. So this is what the Chazon Ish says. Then he continues to say that perhaps maybe it is prohibited. The Chazon Ish is of the opinion that it's prohibited because of a rabbinical prohibition. This is what he says. He says, "Mikom makom kivan du oise es koach hamechabes," since he's himself creating the thing that's going to put it out, then it's prohibited because rabbinically. But he says, but even if you don't say that, even if you don't say, and I'm assuming that he's talking about that you're doing it on Shabbos. The Chazon Ish himself says that you can't do it on Shabbos because what you're doing is you're setting in motion something which is going to put out a fire, and he says that that's rabbinically prohibited. But he says even if you don't, you're not allowed to reconstruct a functional vessel that's going to function in the way that you want it to function. It's called binyan b'kelim. You're not allowed to build a vessel on Shabbos. See, he holds that if you build a vessel on Shabbos that's going to cut the electrical flow in a circuit, he holds that that's building. So because of that, it's prohibited. He holds it's prohibited. However, here in our case, the rabbi says, we're not talking about, the Chazon Ish is talking about that you did this on Shabbos. You took a peg, you placed it in the Shabbos clock on a later time, right? Let's say on Sukkot, it's Sukkot and it's Shabbos, or it's Sukkot, it's not Shabbos, whatever. And you realize that the lights are not going off in the sukkah, and you want to sleep in the sukkah, right? In Phoenix, you can do that. You could sleep in the sukkah. But the lights are not going on until 1 o'clock in the morning. So are you allowed to move the peg? And place it in an earlier time in the Shabbos clocks, which should put out the lights? So you're allowed to do that. Not according to the Chazon Ish, but we hold that you can do that. You're supposed to set up the Shabbos clock in a way that it's set up, but if it happened already, so then
it makes sense. It's mechanical. There's no, you're not stopping the electrical circuit.
yeah, you're allowed to do that because also you're not putting out the lights. It's a secondary cause that's going to happen later, like we said.
Mm-hmm.
The Chazon Ish says you can't do that for two reasons. First of all, it's the rabbinical prohibition because you're setting in motion a mechanism that's going to put out a fire. And second of all, he says because you're reconstructing the vessel or reconstructing the mechanism itself, which is called building. That's when you build a circuit. That's what the Chazon Ish says. But we don't hold like that. We hold that if you could do that on Shabbos. You could do that on Shabbos and Yom Tov if you have to. You could take the peg and move it that it should put out the. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
No, it's the first time I've ever
Yeah?
heard this.
It's interesting.
And when you say we do this, what do you mean by we?
Yeah, so I mean,
Would Rabbi Weissman do this?
yeah, like I said, ask your local Orthodox
local.
rabbi because every rabbi has a different. That's the way it goes. So
Okay.
So,
pick
but
pick
when
your
you
rabbi and
say
follow them.
we, who do you mean?
I mean that according to the opinion of Moshe Feinstein or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I think, as far as I remember, if I'm not mistaken, that's what I mean. But it doesn't mean that some rabbis are stringent and whatever. Make it happen earlier, make it happen later. But the Chazon Ish himself holds you're not allowed to do that. In our case, though, however, we're saying that this wasn't done on Shabbos. This wasn't done on Shabbos. He didn't put
Right.
He didn't turn on the heater. He didn't put the Shabbos clock on his heater on Shabbos. He did it before Shabbos, right? So now he comes and he puts on the what was it, Shimon, right? Shimon went and he put his um he put his coat. It doesn't actually say when he did it. It doesn't say whether he did it on Shabbos or not. He put his coat on the heater, right? So even though Shimon was doing something that was negligent, he should have thought about it, that maybe the heater is going to go on. But at the same time, it's a secondary cause, which he's causing is what's going to happen. He's going to put the jacket on. The Shabbos clock is going to turn on the heater. The heater is going to go on. It's going to heat up. Then it's going to light up the jacket, and then that's going to cause the fire. That's a secondary cause. So the rabbi said that according to this Chazon Ish that holds that it's a secondary cause, he's not going to be obligated. He's not going to be obligated to pay for it. No, he's not going to be obligated to pay.
Neither of them
For-
are, because both of them have a secondary cause.
Yeah, neither of them. But even the Ruvain is Ruvain. He turned it on, and the jacket wasn't even there when he turned on his heater, right? So why should he pay? So he's less negligent. He says, however, ulam bedine shamayim. However, if he wants to fulfill his obligation according to the, I guess morally, the laws of shamayim, he calls it, which is the expression of the Gemara. If he wants to fulfill his obligations, morally, not be obligated by a court, but if he wants to do the right thing. If Shimon wants to do the right thing, mistaber Shimon chayiv, then Shimon should pay.
How old are
That's
they?
the Shimon doesn't say how old they were. I assume they were over by mitzvah. So Shimon who put his jacket on the heater, he should pay if he wants to pay. If he wants to do the right thing, he should pay. Why? He says because there's another halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, and this is the Choshen Mishpat in the laws of damages. In Siman Tov Yud Ches Siftes, there it says in 118 number 9, if let's say one person brings the wood and the other person brings the fire, or vice versa. If one, he doesn't quote the whole thing, but this is what the halacha says there. One person brings the fire, and the other person brings the wood, or one person brings the wood, and then the other person brings the fire. The second person who completed the apparatus that's going to cause the damage, which is the fire kindling the wood, that person is going to be obligated to pay. So here we have a similar case. Similar case is Shimon is the last one because he put his jacket on the heater. So he should pay if he wants, because these two cases are similar. So that's what he says. He says, V'gabe mikra didan, also in our case, Ruvain came in as a hashmal. Yes, Ruvain set up the fire. He turned on his heater. But Shimon went, he changed it to a hat. I thought it was a jacket, but okay, now he's saying it's a hat. So whatever it is, he put his jacket, he put his hat there. And the second one is much more negligent than the first one. That's what he says. Okay. That's case number 1. Case number 2. He has another case that happened. Maisa doima, ira b'bocher shechiber be'erev Shabbos es tanur l'shon Shabbat. Another one set up his heater on erev Shabbos. Again, put it in the Shabbos clock that it should go on erev Shabbos. V'ine higia hamenaki lecheder, and then the cleaner came to the house. What do we call him today? The housekeeper. Housekeeper came to the house. Okay. Well, if she wanted to wash the floor. So what do you do when you wash the floor? You take everything that's on the floor and you put it on the bed. She took all of the objects, she put them on the beds. What?
she's not very smart. but I
Well,
think you're-
she doesn't get paid to be a rocket scientist. She gets paid to clean the house. So this is what she did, right? So what do you think happened? So she looked at the heater and the heater wasn't on. I guess she didn't notice it was plugged into the wall. Maybe it was on batteries. I don't know exactly what happened here. She didn't notice. And then she left the room. Hatana shinishal mitan niglak. I don't know if this happened on Shabbos. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden the heater went on. The whole bed got burnt, and then the whole room. So who has to pay here in this case? Does she have to pay, or does he have to pay?
The insurance company.
What?
The insurance company.
The insurance company. Again, we got to call the insurance. Insurance. They cancel your insurance if you call them too many
Too many
times.
times.
I think
Yeah.
it has to pay. I mean, if you have an employee
So I think.
causes damage in your house, unless it's,
She caused the damage. You're saying she should pay.
she's
no, he
liability.
should pay.
He should pay.
Unless the employee does it with malevolence or,
Right? No, they didn't know. They didn't know. The same case, they didn't know.
then the
So he
employer-
says, "Visham horer in harav." There he has to see. He says, "Shaminake poter af midina shamayim." The cleaner, the housekeeper, does not have to pay, and not even if it's the right thing to do, she doesn't even have to pay, or he or whatever. They don't have to pay at all. Why not? He says, "Mishum shaloniskaven klal lazik." There was no intention of causing any damages at all. The cleaner did what the housekeeper did, what he is supposed to do, and that's clean the room. This is what all housekeepers do. They take everything and they clean the floor. I don't mean clean the floor yet. They haven't cleaned the floor yet. I mean, they clean the floor and then they clean the floor, right? Because they take everything and then they put it on the.
Then they should put it back.
They should put it back. Mine does.
No, this happened
Mine
in
does.
this. No, in this case, it happened while she went to the other room. It went on.
The floor was drying.
Well, where the floor was drying, whatever. They put it on the bed. And she doesn't have to pay because she did exactly what she's supposed to do in the course of what she did. Right? In the other case, he's going to say, in the first case, that Shimon went and put his hat on top of the heater. What is the heater a hook you put your hat on? No, right? People don't put their clothes on heaters. It's only people who are,
Well,
not so
young-
clean.
young
People
boys
throw their
do
stuff
that.
all over. Yeah,
Young boys do that.
they do that, but they shouldn't be doing that.
They
Their
shouldn't
parents
be
are
doing that.
constantly yelling at them. Why you
Yes.
putting, you left this over here and
Yes.
that over there. I'm sure this boy knows 100% from his mother already millions of times. He's not supposed to put his hat on the heater.
So that,
But here she did what she's supposed to do. She didn't do anything that was irregular. What?
well, part of my question, what about their age, is that if they're under 18?
Yeah, so we're
then-
assuming that the age is,
This is Rachel.
that they're obligated with the
What
age.
happened to
So
Rachel's shit?
otherwise, you're right. If they would be
She
not of
put it
age, they
on
would be not
the lamp
obligated,
and
for
Sean
sure.
turned it on
Yeah, your house.
at my house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
In your house?
Yeah, Rachel put her shaitel on a stupid,
She put her shaitel on what?
on a lamp.
On a
Sean-
lamp.
Sean came in the bedroom, turned it on.
Well, he turned it on.
And then
He didn't see the shaitel on the lamp?
He didn't.
He's not-
That's him.
Not everybody thinks.
He didn't notice the shaitel on the lamp? Did he notice that when he turned it on, there was no light?
I don't know.
I mean,
That's
yeah,
as
that's
much
different.
Rachel's fault too, though, right?
Yeah, why would you put your shake on the lamp?
No, but she can claim that he shouldn't have turned it on. If he doesn't have permission to put, at the end of the day, even though there's no harm in it, if the heater doesn't go on, Shimon really doesn't have permission to use Ruvain's heater as a hook.
But you or me.
No, it's me, but I hope that it doesn't turn off our, yeah, it did turn off our recording. Are we recording in the other one? Yeah, we are. Okay. So ומכיוון שאין לו רשות להניח כאן חפציו, היו עליו לעלויס על דייתו שיתוכן שיוצא מכך נזק. He should have thought that maybe something is going to happen because of this. He should have thought about that. And he didn't. All right. Now it's just like this. So that's the cleaning person. That's the cleaning person. What about the person who the young man who left the heater on the floor, turned on? I guess he didn't know that the housekeeper was going to come, or did he know the housekeeper was going to come? He didn't know. Obviously, he didn't know.
Sorry, I missed the first few minutes of the class. Is the goal
This
to
kid,
figure out
no.
who's most responsible, or?
Of who?
No, the goal is if anybody's responsible. So,
Okay.
I mean, within the course of that conversation, we can consider who's more responsible.
Okay.
Maybe they should share the damages, or I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says,
Understandable.
what about this guy who left the heater on the he left the heater on the floor? Maybe he should be obligated.
And what's wrong with leaving the heater on the floor? Just out of
He
curiosity?
left it on.
I thought you just left
He-
it.
You should never walk away, leave the room and. leave
Well, he left it on the
on.
Shabbos. He did leave it on the Shabbos clock. He did leave it on the Shabbos clock because it was off when she put it on the bed. But yeah, you're right. I
It
mean,
was off and she put it on the bed.
correct. But then it went on because it was on the Shabbos clock. She didn't notice, I guess, that there was
She
that it was
wasn't
plugged
cleaning
in.
On Shabbat, that's like,
That's
you
a
have
good
no
point.
housekeeper coming to your house in the time that a Shabbat clock would go on. I'm just saying.
These days, they
Right.
don't.
But people clean on people come on Shabbat. So
Sorry.
there's a Gemara, and also a continuation of that halach in the Shulchan Aruch that we had in Chosh but there's also a Gemara Baba Kam, page 7a. The Gemara says, what happens if a person sheminiach avnu sakino masor, if a person puts, let's say, leaves a knife on the roof, or a stone, something, or a bag, or backpack, they leave it on a roof. And then comes a wind, a regular wind that usually comes in this situation, blows the knife off the roof, and it falls and does damage, or
Hurt someone.
In that case, a person is obligated to pay. So maybe over here he left he left this heater that was going to go on. Maybe that's like a knife on the roof. Maybe that's because it's like a fire, and that the Torah obligates somebody who turns on the fire. He says no. No, he's not obligated. The bacher that left his heater on the floor
Uh-huh.
on the Shabbos clock, he's not obligated.
I
Why
don't
not?
think she is either.
She's not. We already said she's not.
Okay.
You're worried about her.
Yeah.
All right. She's fine. She's fine. Don't worry. She's fine.
You should get out and say.
Yeah. Okay. So mishum sha'ezik shinoitzer machmas tanura nechshavu begeder rushina mitzuya. Because how is he supposed to know that the cleaning lady is gonna? He doesn't know how people clean.
But he should be responsible because if it wasn't if Shabbos was
Yeah.
already out, then he should have unplugged that heater.
Well, he had it on the Shabbos clock. He wanted it to go on. He didn't know that it was going to be put on a bed. How is he supposed to know?
Oh, it was Erev Shabbos.
Yeah, Erev Shabbos. We said it was Erev Shabbos. Hey, even though the cleaning person comes on a regular basis on Shabbos or every single day or whatever it is, and not always do they wash the floor. Sometimes they do the laundry. Who knows? I don't know what they do. They have their thing, especially in our. Well, I don't remember if we have it. Sometimes they do what they want to do. Right. So is he supposed to? And also he can claim, hey, the cleaning person should have noticed that it was plugged in, right? So why should I be responsible? The fact that cleaning person didn't notice is not my problem, but theoretically they should have noticed. So they may not be obligated because they did what they're supposed to do, but at the same time, it was plugged into the wall. Right? So how could they not notice? So he can claim that. So he can claim that it was a secondary cause. So they're both not obligated. The rabbi decided that in the second case, they're both not obligated. In the second case, the cleaning person is not obligated, and the person who left the heater is not obligated. In the first case, we said that maybe they're both also not obligated to pay. But Shimon, who left his hat on top of the heater, if he wants to do the right thing, he should pay. In the second case, neither person has to pay, and even if they want to do the right thing, they don't have to pay at all, because each one has a reason why they should that satisfies the threshold of their responsibility that they're not responsible for what they did, so they don't have to pay. However, we have one more question left, and this, with this we're going to conclude, but we have something to add to this, and that is like this. He says, in the second case, remember, what was the second case? The second case was that
The code on the.
no, that's the first case. The second case is that the person left the heater on the floor on the Shabbos clock before Shabbos. Cleaning person came, put the heater on the bed, went to the other room to clean, and then the heater went on the Shabbos clock, and the whole thing went on fire, the whole bed and the room and everything. And the rabbi said that they don't have to, neither of them has to pay in that second case. So the owner of the room now comes to the rabbi, the owner of the room, and he says, then who's going to pay me? If the cleaning person has to pay and the bacher doesn't have to pay, then who's going to pay? I'm not going to pay. It's my room, and it was burnt. What should I do?
Not let Bachers
I
sleep at
think
your
it's
house?
the Bacher's responsibility. Teach them a lesson.
That may be teaching him a lesson, maybe. All right. But what did the rabbi say? The rabbi said like this, Heishuv Mareinu Harav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, Shikosav boy, and it says by him, Ube'esh ani asa livnoisa, the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built with fire in the future. Yishalem kol hanezik shenigrim lecha. Hashem will pay you back.
And the insurance company.
Hashem is going to pay you back.
First the insurance company.
That makes sense, 'cause it's the owner, it's on the owner, basically.
Huh?
It's on the owner, right? The owner's gotta pay for it.
Uh-huh.
The-
It's on the owner.
It's on the
So if
owner.
you
Well,
rent out your
the
house-
owner has to pay for it, even though he
So
he
the
wasn't
moral
he
story,
was
you
on
rent out
vacation.
But then,
Everyone
Let's-
is used, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no.
okay, even if that's the halacha, could I just say something?
Yeah.
If the yeshiva doesn't cover this, or whoever rented the room doesn't cover this, the owner's never going to want to rent to them again.
Fine.
I would
I mean,
be in that
then,
owner's
then
position.
they may want to pay. If that's the case, they may want to pay that if that's true.
Somebody's
But they're not obligated to pay as far as the halacha is concerned. You're right, but that's the decision you want to make on the relationship, a business relationship that you want to keep.
Yeah, but then the owner didn't have anything to do with the damage. Why is the owner obligated to swallow the cost?
It's not that he's swallowing that's the way David said it, that he's swallowing the cost, but I mean, he's swallowing the cost because he's at the wrong place at the wrong time. But those things happen. What if a hurricane came and destroyed the house? So then he would have to swallow the cost. Swallowing the cost doesn't mean that you're paying for the damages. Swallowing the cost means that you were at the wrong place at the wrong time. We can't obligate anybody here. So what are we supposed to do?
Everyone did everything in accordance. If you own something, I'm sitting here on someone else's thing and it breaks, and I own the thing, then it's not the other person's, but they use it in the normal course of what it's supposed to use.
Correct. It was right. If
So
you
the owner
borrow,
pays it, you know.
correct. If you borrow something and use it in the normal course of the way it's supposed to be used, let's say you rent a car and then the car, the engine breaks, you don't have to pay for the engine.
Right,
Because
that's
if
how.
you-
normally
but
don't
if you
use it.
brought in a heater to the room, that the heater wasn't in the room.
You're right. But people use heaters in a room.
But not as coat hangers or hat hangers.
Were you talking about the first case or the
Right.
second
No,
case?
the
With that, no, in the
second.
in the first case, we are saying that the one who put his hat
Mhm.
on the heater to do the right thing, he should pay.
Mhm.
But in the second case, we're saying he turned on the heater, he put it on the floor where the heater goes, he put it on where it's supposed to be. and he turned it on the Shabbos clock with what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to know the intricacies of housekeeping. I mean, he doesn't have to know. That's what the rabbi said. So one more question we want to deal with, and that is this. Let's deal with this question is to add a little bit. Now that we're done with the halacha. First of all, what does he mean that the Hashem who's going to build the Beis Hamikdash with fire is going to pay him? First of all, what does the Beis Hamikdash have to? Can we leave the Beis Hamikdash out of this? What are the Beis Hamikdash just to come in over here? What does the Beis Hamikdash have to do with this? And so what if it's going to be built with fire? Just because the damage was done with fire, and if the damage was done with water, then we wouldn't bring this analogy. What is the rabbi saying? What does it have to do with paying damages that were caused with fire? And what does fire have to do with the building the Beis Hamikdash? And why is the Beis Hamikdash going to be built with fire? This is left unanswered here, unaddressed. This is what he told us. Too small, right? I take off my glasses. Here we go. Watch. So here,
Okay, wait, Hashem who will build the Beis Hamikdash with fire, what?
Hashem, who will build the Beis Hamikdash with fire, will pay you back. The owner of the room came to the rabbi and he said, "Who's going to pay me? If the cleaning person's not going to pay me and the bacher is not going to pay, who's going to pay?" So he said, "Hashem will pay." And why is Hashem going to pay? Because Hashem is going to build the Beis Hamikdash with a fire. You got damage with fire, Hashem is going to pay you. So we're asking, what does that have to do with anything?
I got it.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, it's a mitzvah that you're absorbing someone else's burden and helping somebody out that maybe can't be helped out any other way. And so whatever you absorb in your mitzvah is the way that God will repay you.
Okay, but yeah, boss, that's good, very good. You're a professional rabbi now. But the question is, what does that have to do with fire, though, and the Beis Hamikdash?
So maybe that's the point, is that, whatever you do in an act of kindness to somebody else, you have that act of kindness back from Hashem.
Fine, that's good. I mean, we're forcing this guy to be kind? You mean the owner? He doesn't want to be kind. He wants his money.
Well, sometimes you've got to do things you don't want to do, right? Right?
You got to be kind.
Right? But we all do things we don't want to do, or we all absorb things that we don't want to.
You sound like the speech that the rabbi gave to the owner of the house.
I'm a renter. No, but
All
it's
right.
true. I mean, we all encounter things in our jobs that we end up sometimes saying, "Well, I don't really want it," but you do it, and you try to do it.
Yeah, I hear.
The renter's insurance.
That's what I kept saying.
I'm sure there will. Maybe there will. I don't know.
But no,
Maybe
you know what, I had a
his premiums
situation
could go up. His premiums can go up if that happens.
Insurance would not cover.
Or the insurance sometimes doesn't cover it. Sometimes the insurance says we don't cover this. We don't cover a cleaning lady putting a heater on top of a bed. That we don't. That's
Never
not.
cover what you needed.
So I have another question, though.
Yes.
Okay. Considering this halacha, right? Usually when you rent an apartment, you pay a deposit, right? And then when you leave, the owner decides how much of the deposit to give you back based on when anything is done. Let's say the owner is Jewish. How does this halacha affect the owner's decision of how much deposit to give back?
Okay, well, that's going to be complicated because the truth is it's going to depend on the contractual agreement between the renter and the renter and the renter. Is that how you say it? The renter and the renter?
Tenants.
The tenant. The renter and the tenant. It's going to depend on the contractual agreement because they'll say, look, you agreed to pay if this happens, or you didn't agree to pay if this happens. We're talking in a case where there was no contractual agreement and everybody's just going to follow whatever the Torah dictates, and then they went to the rabbi to make that decision. So
So the contract.
if the person is Jewish, it doesn't matter if the person's Jewish or not, it's going to be whatever the contract says. Because that's the agreement between the two parties that the space is going to be rented in accordance with this agreement. What, Eric?
It's like, can a contract override the Beit Din? I mean.
It depends. I mean, I guess if the two parties agree, probably yes. The parties agree, yes.
Okay.
Unless you can make, and then this becomes now complicated, unless you can make the argument like some people make in court, is that nobody really reads the terms of agreement, right?
Right.
Because they're 20,000 pages, and so a normal person just signs at the bottom and can't be expected to know everything it says in the agreement. I mean, you can make that argument maybe without getting into, those details. But here we're talking about the Torah law in a crude sense for the Parsha, Dvar Torah.
Okay.
right? Okay, so so let's say like this. We're gonna say not like Pamela, but Pamela's saying good. All right. We're gonna say like this. First of all, what is the difference between being the base Hamikdash, the third base Hamikdash being built with fire, not being built with fire? On this, Rashi says in Rosh Hashanah on page 30, Rashi says the ain beini base Hamikdash, that Rashi says base Hamikdash is not going to be built on Yontif and it's not going to be built at night. He says Hani Mili. This applies to, he's quoting on Gemara and Shavuos on page 15b. Binyan b'nei Adam. That's talking about if you build a base Hamikdash by a person. So if a person builds the base Hamikdash, the first base Hamikdash, the second base Hamikdash, it can't be built on Yontif and it can't be built at night. Abel, says Rashi, Binyan ha'aseh, the third base Hamikdash, Allah said, Lavoy, bidei shamayim, who it's going to be built with heaven. So the difference between the Beis Hamikdash being built with fire and not being built with fire is that it's not being built by anybody. It's that the Rabbanu Shalom, the Hashem, is going to be building the third Beis Hamikdash. Right? That's the built with fire. Aside from the fire, means that the Beis Hamikdash will be built by Hashem, not by people, not by bricks and mortar or construction crew that you're going to hire. That's not how it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's a fire that's going to come down from Shemayim, like it did by Eliyahu Navi, whatever. It's going to come down from Shemayim. It's going to land on the ground, and there'll be a Beis Hamikdash in its wake. That's what's going to happen. So now the question is why do you need a fire to build? Why a fire? Why should you build with a fire? Why not build a Beis Hamikdash with hail? Maybe it should be a hailstorm, and then when the hailstorm is over, there'll be a Beis Hamikdash standing. Why with a fire? So if you remember, a few weeks ago, we quoted the Maral, if I'm not mistaken, in Tiferes Yisrael, chapter 59, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Chapter 59, I mean, a few weeks ago in the podcast, we said, in class, we said that fire, as an analogy to Torah and as an analogy to Hashem, that fire is analogous to spirituality. Remember, we said that the same way that fire has no partner in this world, it's kind of like its own entity, unlike everything else, unlike all other matter. So too, it's an analogy to Hashem, that Hashem and Torah are separate from this world. They have no partner in the physical world. So really what a fire is an analogy to spirituality. So according to what we're saying is that the fire is going to come down from Shemayim. It's going to build the third Beis Hamikdash. It means that there'll be an emanation or whatever of spiritual energy that's going to come down from Shemayim and it's going to build the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it means. That's why we're saying that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built with fire. But if that's true, now we have another question. Why do we need the whole lights and what do you call it? The whole show with the lights and the fire to come down and Shemayim. What do we need that for? Why not have people build it? Okay, so people are not going to build it. Hashem is going to build it with the spiritual fire. It's going to be a spiritual Beis Hamikdash. The answer is simple. The answer is that if people build it, there's a difference between people building the Beis Hamikdash and Hashem building the Beis Hamikdash. If people build the Beis Hamikdash, they're humans. Humans have faults. Humans are not perfect. Right? As it says in other parts in Ecclesiastes, it says there's no person in the land that does good and doesn't sin. Humans are not perfect. Hashem, he's perfect. So if the Beis Hamikdash, presumably if the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built by people, the Beis Hamikdash is not going to be perfect. And we have a sign to that. Look at what happened to the first Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash. It was built by people. And maybe because it was built by people, in the end it was destroyed. But the third Beis Hamikdash is going to be built by Hashem. And since it's going to be built by Hashem, it's not going to be destroyed because Hashem is perfect. He's going to build the Beis Hamikdash perfect. With a spiritual fire, it's going to be in itself something which is built with a spiritual energy that's analogous to a fire, is also going to be a spiritual entity because it's not going to be, the fire is not going to come and make bricks and then it's going to come from Shemayim. So it's going to be, the Beis Hamikdash is going to be a special entity, which means that it's never going to be destroyed. Why would a Beis Hamikdash not be destroyed if it's built by a spiritual entity? And the answer to that is because the spiritual entity represents the world coming to perfection, like the Das Funo says, like the knowing heart, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto says, that the world is going, Hashem is leading the world to perfection. So the building of the third base Hamikdash with spiritual energy, which is not going to be ever destroyed, represents the world standing in perfection. All humans achieving their purpose, all nations achieving whatever perfection that they're supposed to achieve, right? So nobody's going to be lacking or missing anything in such a situation. The world is going to be in a perfect place. That's why the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built when Mashiach comes, the third Beis Hamikdash, and that's why it's going to be built with fire, and that's why it's going to be built by Hashem. So the rabbi was telling him, now we don't know who's responsible. Your house is imperfect because it's burnt down, right? A house that's not burnt down is perfect compared to a house that's burnt down. And your house that's burnt down is imperfect. Now it has to be rebuilt. But there's nobody to pay for it because we live in an imperfect world. Because you have a loss that nobody can complete. So who's going to pay you? Hashem is going to pay you because he's going to build the Beis Hamikdash with a fire. The same way that Hashem is going to lead the world to perfection, and which means that everything that's lacking and everything that's missing and everything that people don't have, they're going to have, because that's what Hashem does. He gives the perfect good. That person Hashem is going to fulfill your loss because now you're in a state of imperfection because we live in an imperfect world. We have nobody to pay you. But don't worry, Hashem is going to pay you because Hashem pays everybody what they are missing eventually. That's what happens. So that's what I think is the rabbi was saying to me. Maybe if you heard that, he was satisfied. Maybe not. I don't know. It doesn't say what his reaction was.
So
That's what I wanted to share with you guys this evening.
where's the third temple supposed to be built?
I mean, as far as I understand, in the same place as both temples in
What's there now?
in Yerushalayim. Well,
What's there now?
There's the
Well, we
Western
have
Wall and
the
there's
mosque there
mosque.
now, unfortunately.
Think about that.